This is Jerri Rosen with Working Wardrobes. Welcome to our Rebuilding Careers podcast. I have an extraordinary guest today that I want to introduce you to. Please welcome Margaret Bayston, CEO at Laura's House. Welcome to the show, Margaret.
Thank you, Jerri. I'm excited to do this with you.
Well, you and I go back for many, many years, but I want to just talk about you, Margaret, and I want to talk a little bit about your background and how you found yourself in the seat of the CEO at Laura's House. What's your background story?
Well, you know, I trained as a lawyer in England, and I did actually family law and criminal law, worked for a nice general practice. But my husband's work brought us across here to the States, and I was not really that comfortable just being a corporate wife. So I took my resume down to the DA's office and said, I'm here and I want to volunteer. And they put me to work in the, I guess it was victim witness at the time. And they said to me, you can help women prepare their statements for testimony in domestic violence cases. And I had never done that before, actually. But I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. So I did that, and I got to be friends with a judge who at the time was Pam Miles. And she said, you need to go to Laura's House. And I said, what's Laura's House? I really didn't know what Laura's House was. And she said, you know, you can start a legal clinic for them. They need you. So I came and did that. And really that was 23 years ago. And I volunteered for the first 2 years, but the rest of it's kind of history. I love it.
So Margaret, did you see the incidents of domestic violence when you were a barrister in England? Was there much of that happening?
I wasn't a barrister. I was a fellow of the Institute of Legal Executives. So it's like a solicitor. Yeah, I know. So barristers wear wigs. We had no wigs.
No wigs. Okay.
No wigs.
I think you'd look great in a wig.
Thank you. Yes, we did. Of course, the domestic violence is the same. I actually think the world over. I mean, certainly third world countries have it worse because they don't have the resources we have. But certainly England and the US, I actually think are very similar. Yeah.
I want to talk about the work that you're doing at Laura's House. And I also want to make sure that we have a chance to cover the incidents of domestic violence and what you have seen as the result of the pandemic. So first, give us the mission statement. What is it that you are attempting to do at Laura's House?
So what we actually do is our target population for our services are those families that need shelter and support services, they need education, and they need therapy. So anybody that's been affected by domestic violence and needs those services are who we want to help. And our goal really is to get these families and individuals back on the path to being able to live violence-free with hope for a future. So all the things that go towards making that possible for them, that's what we try to do.
So is it possible for the family to be reunited, or is it such that the woman really needs to be able to be independent and live on her own and take care of herself and her children?
Yeah, we're not in the business of splitting families up. We have at our new offices in Aliso Viejo services for the whole family. So we actually serve men, women, children, you know, family therapy, the whole realm of services for them. For our emergency shelter, though, obviously we don't take whole families. So we do take women and their children. We actually take men and their children. That's happened twice.
Really?
Yeah. People don't realize that men are victims of domestic violence. And we actually had 3 men come in, 2 with children and 1 on his own, through the course of last year. And yeah, 25% of victims of domestic violence are male.
I had no idea, Margaret, that it was that significant. Is that sort of an unknown quantity in our country? I don't know that we really talk much about these numbers.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's happened in recent years, that people see that domestic violence is not quite the taboo subject it used to be, and that there are resources available. And men really truly get victimized just, I think, as much as women, but they're embarrassed and ashamed to come forward. So people don't know it's there, and I do want people to know we have services. I mean, they have their own room, their own bathroom, everything, even on a different floor. So those services are available for men too.
So Margaret, how does someone find their way to Laura's house? How could somebody be in contact with you if they were in need of services?
Yeah, well, there are lots of different ways I think people can get to us. Most of the time it would be through our own website. You know, we have a really kind of robust website and social media, so people quite often will reach us through that avenue. But law enforcement is a great partner of ours, school counselors, the local, unfortunately, the emergency rooms. So anywhere that a client potentially could be, we try and make sure that our information's there so they can get that. And we spend a lot of time on community services to see that we get that information out through health fairs, and a lot of it is actually, since COVID, we've done things online.
So let's talk about how COVID actually affected this whole issue around domestic violence. Have you seen an uptick? Is it flat? Is it decreased? What has actually happened during the pandemic?
Well, you know, it's been tough for everybody, and we know that. But I think for victims of domestic violence, it's been especially hard because most of us feel that being home is the safest place we can be. But you imagine being a domestic violence victim whose abuser is in that home with them. That's absolutely the worst place. And they're isolated and they feel as though they've got nowhere and no resources. So I think it's been pretty horrific for them. So, yeah.
So that could be really frightening. And at times I would imagine even could result in death if a woman is in fact that threatened by a partner. Have we seen an increase in domestic violence deaths as a result of the pandemic?
I haven't heard that yet, fortunately. I mean, we saw immediately in March when we had to pivot to, you know, like doing services virtually, we saw an increase in calls of 40% from March through April because people were just desperate. They didn't know what to do and they didn't feel safe. One of the biggest issues is we help clients get restraining orders, as you know, and they were very afraid to do that because when you get a restraining order, it's served on the abuser, and the chances are they were going to be in the same house. So that would just, you know, be like a red rag to a bull. So what we actually did to make it hopefully a bit easier for the clients was to increase what we call our safety bed nights. So these are hotels and motels that we have basically all over the place, and they're all confidential for, you know, obvious reasons. But we made it such that people could go in and spend a week in a safety net hotel if they were in crisis and needed to get out immediately. And the reason we had to do that was because we had to increase the safety and health and security at our residential facilities for our own staff as well as the clients. So we have a whole safety procedure, you know, for that still in place today.
Fantastic. So Margaret, we're going to take a quick little break. We have so much more information that we want to share with our listeners. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Margaret Bayston, CEO at Laura's House. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. And joining me is Margaret Bayston, the CEO at Laura's House. Margaret, we were just talking about what has been going on during the pandemic and the ways that you've had to pivot the services. Give us a little more idea of what you've done as the head of Laura's House to provide services to a broader audience so that more people can hopefully get the education that is needed to prevent this social ill.
Right. Well, I think during COVID, obviously we realized that the community needed information and education about domestic violence. So we increased our social media. We have started to do workshops and information services. In fact, we have them every week now on how people can get information about domestic violence and related services. And the numbers have just gone through the roof of the amount of people who are actually participating. For example, we do our 40-hour domestic violence advocacy training, and we do that 3 times a year. And normally there'll be about 50 people, you know, in person that do this training. Well, since we opened it up nationally, we have 200 people at each of the sessions and a wait list of almost the same for these classes. And, you know, to get people to do 40 hours online is kind of incredible. So it's showing me that we're actually doing something that people want and that they obviously need. So, you know, that's one example.
Those numbers are extraordinary when you think about it, Margaret. And I get that we have more time on our hands. We have an opportunity to tune in. We're all pretty much in front of our screens. But this is a difficult topic for people to really embrace. What do you think moves their emotional needle so that they're willing to participate in these workshops?
A lot of the people we get on the workshops are professionals. So we get social workers and probation officers and teachers. So I think they have the education, or at least some to start with. But the general population that participate, I think that, well, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime. So if they, yeah, isn't that a ridiculous statistic?
It is. It's absolutely unbelievable that it's that high.
Yeah. So you can imagine that they have either experienced it or they know someone close to them who has. And I think it's being able to be an advocate for domestic violence. It's a powerful thing to be able to say to someone, I've got some information and I definitely have the resources. Let me help you. Let me support you through this. And that's what we've seen.
So I know that you had some very innovative ways that you were getting the information out. And we know that at some point, every woman has to get her hair cut.
Yeah.
What were you doing with hairstylists and hair salons that gave women an access to information about domestic violence help?
Yeah, well, there was actually a program called Cut It Out. Have you heard about that?
I've not. I love the thought of that. Yes.
Right. Yeah. And so obviously people like, you know, like not nail salons, but particularly stylists, hairstylists, we continue to do a training for them because, you know, if someone's hit on the head, you might not see it except their hairstylist will. And
yes.
So, yeah, so we've actually trained them, not necessarily to be therapists. We don't want them to be counselors and therapists, but we want them to know where to refer these women and men to us for the services. And, you know, it's a lot that all the domestic violence shelters have done this together. So it's, again, it's another powerful tool to be able to just reach clients wherever they are. Yeah.
You know, I think that's so incredibly powerful. And I have read articles in the newspaper about hairstylists who literally have helped save the lives of the clients that they're serving. But as you say, no one else would have seen the damage that might be done to their skull except for the hairstylist. So yeah. You're actually creating this whole cadre of activists, if you will, right? With the hairstylists, I'm going to take a stand against domestic violence. How fantastic.
Well, one of the most important thing for those kinds of people is, and caregivers and, you know, teachers and everybody is, if I see something, I want to be able to do something about that. And, you know, bystander intervention can be very dangerous. So we actually teach people, we have a whole class on how to support someone that you know is going through domestic violence. And, you know, these hairstylists and people that know someone in that situation now have that resource to be able to do that through us. Yeah.
So you're helping people in our own community, Margaret, and particularly in South County. What do you see across the country? Is there in fact a network of domestic violence shelters? Is there a way that people across the country can get word in their own communities about how to be safe?
Yes, I mean, I think there are lots and lots of domestic violence organizations all across the country. We've got partnerships with many of them because some clients are not safe even to stay in California, so they'll actually move to another state, and we can help them to do that. We've got a whole new program though that we're launching in February, that is, I'm really excited about that. And it's all to do with our Healthy Emotions and Attitudes in Relationships Today program. And I don't know how much you want me to go into that, but it's certainly, go ahead.
I do want you to talk about it. I want people to tune back in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. Margaret is going to talk to us about her new program called Heart. I know you're going to want to listen to this. We'll be right back with Margaret Bayston.
Perfect.
Welcome back, everyone. And I know you're waiting to hear more about this phenomenal new program that Margaret is launching. Margaret, tell us about Heart.
Okay, so Heart was a program that Laura's House started actually in 2006. And what we do with our basic Heart program is we go into all the middle schools, high schools, colleges, young offenders institutions, and we really teach them about what a healthy relationship looks like, because they don't often know. Most of these kids that are certainly in the young offenders have grown up in a domestic violence household. And we all know that it's cyclical. Domestic violence is taught from one generation to the next. So what we thought was prevention and education is key to what Laura's House does. It's the most important thing we can do because it's the only way we're going to stop it. So we go into the schools and we talk to these kids, and it's absolutely jaw-droppingly agonizing to me that 57% of kids in our high schools know somebody that has been physically abused by their boyfriend or girlfriend. And what's even worse is that 80% of those kids that have been physically abused stay in those relationships because they think, well, you know, they love me, it's just attention. So our goal is to go in there and tell them that, you know what, you're worth so much more than that. You have options. You do not have to put up with this kind of abuse. And that's what Heart does. Now, it's been so successful, we can't keep up with the demand for the services. And many of them have been from Canada, from the East Coast. And as I mentioned to you, I think before, 18 different states now want Laura's House to deliver this service to their kids. And we realized, you know what, we can't do that, but what we can do is train the trainer. So that's what we're rolling out in February. And it's an ongoing training for all the administrators, teachers, and they get accredited in delivering our curriculum to their own schools and colleges. And so it means that this information can get out to anybody that needs it. I mean, I'm even excited that it's going to get even international. We have Canada already, but it's going to go even further than that. And it's because it's so needed, and it's very exciting for us.
I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. And, you know, I'm also reminded of the alignment of the missions of Laura's House and Working Wardrobes. You know, when I started Working Wardrobes 31 years ago, Laura's House was one of my first shows that participated, because that was when I said we're going to serve survivors, or at that time victims of domestic violence. And I think the language now is so important that we talk about survivors of domestic violence. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I just think what's so important is that we looked at the root cause of this, and it was all around self-esteem. And if people felt better about who they were, well, the abuser wouldn't need to abuse, and the person abused wouldn't take that kind of an abuse. And I'm just struck after all these decades, Margaret, we're still in the same business together of helping people rediscover the power that's inside them, the self-confidence, the dignity that's inside, so they will say no. Right. Relationship that is not working for them. So when you talk to the women that you're working with, there's a point in time when they're on their feet, right? They're ready to make another step happen with their careers. And that's what I want to just, as we wrap up our show, I want to talk about, where do you get to the place where we can say to them, let's talk about a career opportunity? Is there a chance for us to collaborate with the women who have gone through the program and now know they've got to take their lives back into their hands and figure out what's the career step?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked me, because there's a couple of things right off the bat that I think that I'd love to be able to do with you. I mean, when our clients move from the emergency shelter into the transitional housing, they can stay there for up to a year. And our goals, obviously through our case management, are to get them, you know, back into the employment area, because that's key to them being able to be self-sustainable. And so, you know, interview skills and clothing for getting back to work, and computer skills and any kind of technological, you know, education is absolutely vital to them. And I think that you guys could do that, right?
We are masterful at all of that, Margaret. And I'm telling you, as soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to promise that you come for a tour, because
Right.
there's so much connectivity that we can do with the women. And honestly, we are even launching a campaign this quarter to help scholarship women who have lost their jobs because of COVID. They
Right.
don't have enough money to take care of themselves and continue to work. And they're likely going to be the same people that are winding up in a shelter, a safe shelter. So
Right.
let's look though beyond COVID, because it's gonna end, we hope, one of these days. So I want you to think about, if you had a crystal ball, Margaret Bayston, what would you want to see happen to end domestic violence? Is it possible for us to see an end to domestic violence?
I hope so, in our lifetime, that we can do it. But if I had a crystal ball, I actually would want a couple of things. It's a progression. I want people to hold abusers accountable for the actions that they perpetuate, because people always ask me, well, why did she stay? Why did she do that? It's not about that. It's about us as a community holding the abusers responsible for their actions. Because when that happens, people's kind of attitudes start to change. That will be key. And then after COVID, we've got a 20,000 square foot building that I actually need to do a lot of services in. And I would love for Working Wardrobes and other nonprofit partners to come in and all together have a space to be able to give all our mutual clients the services they need to get them on the road much, much quicker. That's kind of practically what I see.
You have an incredible vision, and I'm going to tell you in front of everyone who's listening, Working Wardrobes is in. We want to be collaborative partners with you, because we want people back on their feet. We want to help people rebuild careers, and even if it's someone who hasn't been in the workforce, they are going to need to rebuild their careers in some way, shape, or form, and we want to stand ready to do that. I'm so honored that you took the time to be with us, Margaret. You're doing such extraordinary work at Laura's House. And I can only imagine your background as an attorney has really informed so much of what you're seeing happen at Laura's House. Have you?
I think so. I think so. But you know, partners like you, Jerri, you're a sage in my world. I mean, you really are like an oracle. And without people like you encouraging people like me, we wouldn't be able to do it. So I really appreciate you inviting me today.
Oh my goodness, it's been a pleasure. We're going to do this again, Margaret, and maybe the next time we're going to do it over wine. If you're in for that, I'm in for that.
I'm in.
Margaret, thank you for being with us today, and for all of you who've been listening to our Rebuilding Careers podcast, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Thanks, everyone.